Dear learners, I welcome you all to this concluding lecture on the course on understanding human rights. After having a discussion in 59 lectures on the various aspects of various dimensions of human rights, now we have to find out what we have learned so far. In the very beginning, as I explained that this is a course which is not only to be taught and learned, but the main thing is that how much sensitized we are about our rights and about our duties, or about the rights of others and also about our own duties. That is important. So, first of all, we discussed, you will find what we have learned so far. The first thing that I tried to explain was the meaning of human rights. And we found that you will find there are many uh, meanings that have been attached to human rights. The people have tried to interpret human rights in their own way. The countries, according to their own cultural milieu, social milieu, they have tried to explain human rights, and that's why it was quite problematic to define human rights. So, in the light of the definitions, we tried to understand the meaning of human rights, and we discussed the definitions given by the scholars or the experts of the subject. And in that, we found that human rights are the legitimate claims of all individuals, and they should be available to all human beings. Why? Because they are human beings. This much is enough. So by virtue of being human, every individual has legitimate claim over certain rights which are inalienable and inherent. Then we discuss the nature of human rights. That in the nature of human rights, again we discuss that human rights are universal, human rights are indivisible, human rights are inalienable. For example, human rights are not absolute. For example, they are not licensed, and that's why we also discuss that human rights and duties go together. And uh, you know we discussed and we finally found that striking a balance between rights and duties is important if we want to develop a human rights culture across the globe. Then we discuss the significance of human rights, why these human rights are important, and we found that you see that the human rights, because they ensure life with dignity, they human rights are needed because in when these positive socio-economic conditions that may be called human rights, if they are available, then only an individual can develop his personality to the fullest extent, and he can utilize all his or her potential for the development of his community or the country and humanity as a whole. Then we also discussed the classification of human rights, and in the classification of human rights, we discussed the civil dimension, for example, the civil rights, what are civil rights, then we discussed what are political rights, and then economic, social, and cultural rights we discussed. And then we also went for what is called the generational classification of human rights. Generational classification of human rights, that is first generation of human rights we discussed, and the first generation of human rights are civil and political rights. Why they are called first generation of human rights? Because you'll find from Magna Carta to the French Revolution or the American War of Independence, the civil and political rights were emphasized, and they were claimed and they were secured, so that is why they are called first generation human rights. And then you will find in the post-industrial revolution era, there was a struggle for social justice, economic justice, because there was plight of the workers, and there was inequality that was created because of the capitalist mode of production. Then the socialism came into picture, and the social movements were built for claiming the economic, social, and cultural rights. And that is why the revolutions like, for example, Bolshevik Revolution of Russia 1917 and other socialist revolutions, they played an important role in legitimizing the claim of socio-economic and cultural rights, and that's why they are called second generation human rights. Then we discuss the third generation human rights. They are group rights, and for example, rights to development, right to self-determination, that was also demanded because of the liquidation of colonies, because of the freedom struggle, national liberation struggle. They were successful. Many new countries emerged, and that is why they demanded right to development, right to self-determination, and then you will find that environmental rights were also claimed. And after that, we discussed about the uh, you know what is called the emerging paradigm of fourth generation human rights that has been there because of the advancement of science and technology, because of the genetic engineering, because of the artificial intelligence, and then issues related with all these problems. Then you'll find access to internet, for example. You can also find cyber trolling, cyber terrorism, and invading the privacy of the people in the in the cyberspace. All these issues have become important. So that is why now the people are also discussing the fourth generation human rights that we tried to discuss. For example, genetically modified food, that is an important issue. Genetic engineering, for example, that is an important issue where some kind of consensus must be built. So these are the issues that the human rights activists and the scholars are trying to address, and that's why kind of fourth generation human rights is also emerging because of the advancement of science and technology, because of the IT revolution, and because of the genetic engineering, etc. For example, the use of euthanasia or mercy killing, for example. These are the issues. They include many things. Then we discussed the evolution of the concept of human rights, and we have started from Magna Carta to the International Bill of Rights. So from the 1215 Magna Carta to the International Bill of Rights, we discussed how human rights have evolved. And in that, we discussed the different dimensions of human rights, civil and political rights, for example. Then we discussed the social, economic, and cultural rights and the other rights that were demanded. And then the role of the United Nations in universalization of the concept of human rights that we already highlighted when we were discussing about the International Bill of Rights, which included uh, UDHR, that is Universal Declaration of Human Rights, and then the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, and then International Covenant on Economic, Social, and Cultural Rights. After that, we discussed the non-Western perspectives of human rights. And in that non-Western perspective of human rights, we discussed Hindu, Buddhist, and Islamic perspectives on human rights. And we found that the main difference, if you want to understand, between the Western and non-Western tradition, to an appreciable extent, it can be said that the Western tradition is more right-centered approach to human rights, or sometimes it is also called right-centric. But it is right-centered approach, whereas the non-Western tradition is mostly duty-centered approach to human rights. So that we try to understand in the light of the faith-based tradition, that is Hinduism, Buddhism, and Islamic. Then another important dimension of the discussion in the syllabus was theories of human rights. And in the theories of human rights, how the theoretically we, or what is normative justification for the claims of rights. And in the light of these uh, four important theories, of course, not all theories we have not included, but in the light of four important theories, that is natural rights theory, legal rights theory, historical rights theory, Marxist theory of human rights, we try to understand the normative justification of the claim of human rights. In the natural rights theory, you found that the scholar or the thinkers believe that rights are natural. The human beings are born with certain inalienable inherent rights that cannot be taken away by the state or by the society. So that was one thing. Then legal rights theory, in which it was, you will find there are many legal rights theory. They were critical of natural rights theory. For example, Jeremy Bentham said that natural rights are nonsense, and they are nonsense upon a stilt. And according to them, that natural rights will become shallow and they will not be realized unless they are recognized by the law of the land. So that is why they accorded importance to law, and they said that the law recognizes the rights, and because of that they become rights. Then we discussed the historical rights theory, in which we discussed how human rights are evolutionary in nature, and the continuous development in the catalog of human rights. We found that how the horizon of human rights or the catalog of human rights has been expanding with the passage of time, with the challenges that the people have been facing. And then we discussed the Marxist theory of human rights, and we found that there is, strictly speaking, there is nothing like the Marxist theory of human rights, but because Marx believed that human rights is the bourgeois notion, and it developed at a particular juncture of history. But you'll find that in the light of the Marxian alienation and other Marxist theoretical aspects, we try to identify human rights in the light of Marxism, and then we discuss the Marxist theory of human rights. After that, we uh, discuss the basic concept to understand human rights, that is liberty, meaning, and dimension. Uh, because it is the basic concept to understand, you will find there is rights and liberties, they overlap, and that's why in many societies you will find human rights movements are also called civil liberties movement. So that's why civil liberties, human rights, they go together. We discuss liberty and its various dimension. Then we discuss equality, again meaning and dimension. And in the equality, when we are trying to understand meaning and dimensions, you'll find it is one of the most important right to equality, which has been emphasized in all the human rights treaties all over the world, whether it is regional or whether it is international human rights treaties. And then we discuss the issue of justice and its meaning and dimensions. So because the justice, it is said without justice there cannot be peace, and when there is no peace, human rights cannot be realized or enjoyed. So that is why peace, justice, rights, they all are interrelated. So these concepts that we discuss, that is rights, liberty, then equality and justice, they are interrelated. They are supplementary and complementary to each other, and that is why they are important. After that, we discuss the United Nations and human rights. And in the United Nations and human rights, first of all, we identified the mention of human rights in the UN Charter. And one of the purposes of the establishment of the United Nations was to reaffirm faith in fundamental human rights. In the Charter, you'll find there is mention of human rights. Of course, the promotion of human rights has been mentioned, because in the very beginning, United Nations was not in a position to develop the mechanism for the protection of human rights. So that is why the promotion of human rights was one of the goals of the establishment of the United Nations. After that, we discussed in the light of the various treaties and convention that the United Nations has developed, and then after UN Charter, we discussed the Universal Declaration of Human Rights that was adopted by the United Nations General Assembly on 10 December 1948, and this was declared as the common standard of achievement for all peoples and all nations. It was, Mrs. Roosevelt described it as uh, the Magna Carta of mankind. And since then, from 10 December 1948, every year we celebrate or observe International Human Rights Day to commemorate the occasion. Why? Because on this day, this Universal Declaration of Human Rights was adopted by the United Nations General Assembly. But it was only a declaration, and it did not have what we call the legal weight. And that's why it was just like moral obligations of the states, of course, but they were also important, but it played an important role in universalizing the concept of human rights. So after that, the United Nations, after 18 years of its adoption, uh, came with two legally binding treaties on human rights. That is, first was International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, and the International Covenant on Economic, Social, and Cultural Rights. So you'll find both uh, these covenants were adopted by the United Nations in 1966, and they are basically, ICCPR is representing first generation human rights, and the ICSCR is representing second generation human rights, which is very much clear from the uh, title of the this covenants. So at a time when the world was divided into two hostile blocs, socialist and the capitalist, you'll find ICCPR in a way satisfied the aspiration of the capitalist bloc, and the ICSCR satisfied the aspiration of the socialist bloc in that way, and that is why the consensus was achieved by the United Nations. Then, after discussing the role of the United Nations in universalizing the concept of human rights and developing mechanism for the international protection of human rights, and we discussed the journey of the United Nations from promotion of human rights to the protection of human rights. After that, we already discussed the regional arrangements of promotion and protection of human rights, in which the three important regional arrangements, we discussed. That was the European Convention on Human Rights, the American Convention on Human Rights, and then the African Charter of Human and People's Rights. The three important regional conventions, we discuss what kind of institutional mechanism or implementation mechanism they have adopted, how they have created, code for the protection of human rights. All these we discussed, and we found that these regional mechanism or regional instruments of human rights are quite effective in implementing human rights in their respective regions. After that, we discuss the contemporary discourse on human rights, that is terrorism, counter-terrorism, and human rights. You will realize that terrorism has become a global scourge, which is threatening not only peace and order, but it is also leading to violations of human rights. Similarly, the terrorism invites counter-terrorism because the states have to counter terrorism, because terrorism is something that is always undermining the authority, and it is always, in most of the cases, the target of the attack is are the innocent people. So the innocent people are victimized. So that is why, terrorism and counter-terrorism that leads to violation of human rights. So when we are saying that the terrorism and counter-terrorism are leading to violation of human rights, you'll find what happened in an area which is affected by terrorism, insurgency, or militancy. You will find people are sandwiched between the security agencies and the terrorists, and it becomes very difficult for them to lead a normal life. So there are many issues in those areas which are affected by terrorism, insurgency, militancy, etc. So that we discussed, and what are the dimensions of the violations of human rights in terrorism and counter-terrorism. Then we discuss the arms and human rights, how the armament or the arms race is leading to violation of human rights in the different parts of the world, from diverting the resources for a destructive purpose to leading to killing on daily basis. Thousands of people are being killed every day because of firearms that are there available, readily available with the people. So, because of the arms, what is happening, that the capacity to kill is increasing day by day. And the sophistication in the weapons is leading to what we call the arrays for acquisition of weapons of mass destruction, which includes nuclear bombs, nuclear weapons, uh, chemical and hydrogen, chemical and biological weapons as well. So that is why, this is quite problematic, because the very availability of these weapons, they create chances of war. And if these weapons are available, the people fear that if they are being used, or if they are used in a war, then what will happen to our planet? Uh, so if you see that the nuclear bombs or the nuclear weapons that are available with the United States of America or Russia, and either of these two countries, if they go alone for the use of nuclear bomb that they possess, they can destroy our planet many times. So this is the destructive capability that the civilized human beings in the 21st century have achieved. And their hunger for uh, acquisition of weapons, development of weapons, is not dying, and they are still trying to achieve sophistication in weaponization of their spaces. Uh, then after that, we discuss environmental right that is becoming a global concern because of global warming and climate change. You will find all the countries are affected. The It is leading to a different kind of problems for the people, and it is said that this environmental problems will lead to a lot of displacement in the different parts of the world, and the exodus of people from the affected areas to other areas, and that will develop social tension uh, or social unrest. So ultimately, the people have to prepare themselves for what is called global governance, because that is going to happen if the global warming and climate change, if it is not uh, stopped. And it was found that it is because of the human activities, mostly it is because of the human activities that the global warming is there, our planet is heating up. So we discuss about the greenhouse gas emissions and what is the role of the state and what are the concern, what are the protocols, what are the treaties to deal with this particular issue. And then we found that there is always a blame game between the nations about the historical responsibility, about the per capita greenhouse gas emission, these kind of arguments you will find, but still, we have made some progress, and now you will find that the countries they have agreed upon to go for clean and green energy so that we can reduce the greenhouse gas emission in the atmosphere. After that, we discuss about the sexual minorities, that how the LGBTQ plus people, what kind of challenges they face in the different countries of the world. Sometimes you will find these inclinations are criminalized and the people are punished. In other countries, they are not encouraged. And the very assertion of their identity is problematic in many, many societies. So that's why their plight, their challenges, or the atrocities they suffer, brutality they suffer, that we try to highlight and we try to sensitize about the rights and the plight of this LGBTQ plus community. Then, after discussing all these issues, we came to our own country, India, and human rights. And then we discussed India's international obligations of human rights. By international obligations of human rights, we mean that what are the treaties, conventions, declarations that India has signed or India is a party to, uh, how many treaties, international treaties. So, and we found that in our constitution itself, under Article 51, it is a constitutional obligation of India to fulfill its international obligations of human rights that we discussed. Mm, and after that, we discussed the constitutional framework of human rights, in which fundamental rights, for example, is the most important thing, which is legally justiciable rights, and you'll find most of the civil and political rights they are included in the fundamental right, that is part third of the Indian Constitution. Then we discuss the directive principle of state policy. Uh, Many socio-economic rights are there in the directive principle of state policy, and how important they are because they are the guiding principle for the state, uh, how to function this, for the betterment of the people. After that, we discuss fundamental duties, because we have been discussing that rights and duties go together. And when rights and duties go together, so that's why the Constitution of India has also included fundamental duties. For example, in the fundamental duties, you will find like scientific temper that is to be developed, composite culture, the spirit of composite culture is to be, maintained in the country. All these things we discussed. After that, we discussed institutional mechanism. In the institutional mechanism, we discussed about the institution that Indian state has developed for the promotion and protection of human rights. So there was one National Human Rights Commission that was created in 1993, uh, and this National Human Rights Commission is responsible for protecting the rights of people. Besides judiciary, of course, judiciary is the guardian of the constitution and the custodian of the rights and liberties of the people. But besides judiciary, National Human Rights Commission has been created, and you'll find the state human rights commissions are there to protect and promote human rights. Then we discuss the bodies that have been created for the promotion of the human rights or the protection of the human rights of the different segments of the population. Most of them are, of course, vulnerable groups. So, for example, National Commission for Minorities. So minorities in any society, they face many kind of challenges, and that's why the National Commission for Minorities was created under the 1992 Act. And then we discussed the National Commission for Women. We have been highlighting the plight of women in the country, what kind of problems and challenges they face. So the National Commission for Women was created. And after that, we will find the National Commission for the Scheduled Caste, another vulnerable group, National Commission for the Scheduled Tribes, and the National OBC Commission, that is National Backward Commission we discussed. And after that, we discussed also there is, a body to protect the interest and the rights of the people with disability. That is also significant in our country. All these things we discussed, that is the institutional mechanism developed by India to protect and to promote and protect human rights. After discussing all these issues, we highlighted the major issues of violations of human rights in India. And while highlighting the major issues of violations of human rights in India, this is we have to see the gap between the theory and the practice. When we say the gap between the theory and the practice, what is relevant from this point of view? That, for example, the constitutional provisions are there. India is also party to many international treaties of human rights. Many other provisions have been, many other legislations have been there in the country for the promotion of human rights. But what happens that there are vulnerable groups in the country, and you have to see their status in the country to find out uh, how the Indian state has tried to promote and protect human rights. Why? Because Harold Jolaski says that a state is known by the rights it maintains. So it means that the what kind of rights are being promoted and protected in the country, that becomes a yardstick to judge the performance of India on this particular indicator. So that's why we discuss the status of minorities. What are the challenges minorities face in the country? What are their apprehensions? What are their grievances? We also discuss the challenges faced by women in our country. And we discuss that the discrimination against women starts from the womb of the mother itself. Female feticide, infanticide, all these are there in the country. Then domestic violence, rapes, murders, humiliation, subordination, whatnot. And then after that, we discussed the two other vulnerable groups in the country and their challenges, their plight, what kind of problems they have been facing for centuries. And it continues even after 76 years of independence. And we discuss about the rights and the status of Dalits in the country, and rights and the status of scheduled tribes in the country. After discussing all these issues, we concluded our discussion on understanding the paper, that is Understanding Human Rights. Uh, Let me first of all confess that it was very difficult to present a compendium of all the issues that we have highlighted over here with the paucity of time, because we have to conclude this course in 60 lectures that is there. And you can find that the issues that we were trying to highlight, they are the issues they need a lot of time for discussion and research. So I do not claim I'm a humble, as a humble, resource person. I will say that uh, I understand the limitation, my own limitation, and the limitation of time. But I hope that I have motivated the learners to study further about human rights. And the sensitization is the most important thing. That understanding our own rights and understanding our own responsibilities. And rights are to be claimed and reclaimed every day. Otherwise, the human rights that are available in the Constitution of India or in other documents, they will just be golden letters. So that is why people are to be sensitized. A vigilant and alert citizenship in any country will ensure the enjoyment of rights of the people. If the people are not vigilant, and if they do not claim and reclaim their rights on daily basis, the people in power will try to encroach upon the rights. So that is why this is the, I think, takeaway from this particular course, that rights are important, responsibilities are equally significant. At the same time, I will say that this course is quite useful for the students, those who are pursuing uh, graduation in political science, international relations, public policy, and also social work, social work and other disciplines, especially law. This course is quite useful for them, and even for other papers of or other subjects of humanities. This course is quite useful. It is called, it is often said that after the establishment of the United Nations, especially, what has happened, that we have started living in the era of human rights. So when human rights is everywhere, you'll find there is human rights journalism. You'll find that human rights is discussed in all the spaces. So this is the reason that it is not only going to give you an understanding, it is also going to sensitize all of us about our rights and also about the plight of the people, those who are around us. So that is all important. And we have already highlighted that the peace and prosperity go together, and peace and prosperity is interrelated with what is called justice, liberty, equality, and rights. So that we highlighted. And let me acknowledge, first of all, some books we have already mentioned in the books that you should consult for further study, but that is not exhaustive. You can explore yourself, dear learners. There are very good books, very good research papers that are available. And let me acknowledge, first of all, one thing that I would not have, or I may not have mentioned all the resource material that I have used while preparing this course, or by uh, when I was discussing the issues, because I have also learned from the various sources. So I am very thankful to all the people, those who have written those wonderful articles, books, and resource material that I utilized. I have tried to acknowledge wherever it was possible, but I may have missed, and if I have missed, or if I have not been able to acknowledge, then I am very sorry for that. But I have tried to acknowledge the material that I have consulted. And if I'll be failing in my duty if I do not acknowledge the assistance given by my teaching assistant, uh, Mr. Dr. Zayed Mustafa Alawi, who has been working day in day out with me while preparing this PPTs and also the resource material, that he has helped me a lot, and also in developing this course. So I'm very thankful to him. I'm very thankful to uh, my own teacher, Professor Abdur Rahim Vijapur, who has been one of the best scholars of the country on human rights. And his book that I have already mentioned, in this particular, you will find resource material that you should consult. And I will say that is one of the finest books that you will consult on understanding the issues of human rights. Uh, with this, dear learners, we are always available. My teaching assistant, Dr. Zaid Mustafa Alvi, and myself, I am a professor in the Department of Political Science, Aligarh Muslim University. You can find my coordinates on the website of Aligarh Muslim University, and you can contact me whenever you need me. The teaching assistant, Dr. Zaid Mustafa Alvi, is always available for you for any kind of help you need. I wish you all the best for you. I wish you a glorious future, a glorious life. Thank you very much.